channel. So in today's video, I will be sharing with you guys something that a lot of you guys probably have asked yourselves and are super curious, and that is, how did we get here? How did we get to Romania? So in 2015, when I repented, I knew that God's calling on my life was to be a missionary. I felt it, I had a desire, I had a burden for people, and I knew that that was God's calling on my life. So I began to pray for a husband that would have that same desire and that same calling. I know a lot of people that have a desire to do something and they marry someone that has the complete opposite desire, and so their whole life they feel unfulfilled, that they never fulfilled what God told them to do. So I began to pray and I said, God, if this is truly what you wanted in my life, I want to have a husband that has that same desire. At that time, I was still in high school and I began to go on short-term mission trips. I went to Mexico, I went to Haiti, as I mentioned in my previous video, until I finished high school. And after high school, I went to a 4-month program at a school called God Provide Missionary School. I will leave their information in the description if you guys are interested. After completing the 4-month program, I was for sure that this is what God wanted out of my life. And so I began to pray for God to send me to a country where He wanted me to go to. At the end of the school, they give you a little form where you complete which country you felt calling for. And I didn't mark any country on the form. I said, God, wherever you are sending me, I am willing to go. And then I got picked to go to Vienna, Austria. And Vienna is a beautiful city, and it definitely wasn't what I was thinking about for missions. I wanted to go to Africa or to India or somewhere where I knew that there was poverty and I knew there were people that were in need. But God already prepared this and ordained my steps before me to go to Vienna, because that is where I would have met Brian, my husband now. So while I was in Austria, Austria is very close to Romania. It's about 4 hours away. The organization that I was serving with in Austria opened a project in Romania, and so they were sending out a team and they asked Brian and me if we would like to go to Romania. So my parents and Brian's parents are both Romanians, so we were kind of brought up in the Romanian culture, so we kind of knew the language, and so going to Romania didn't seem that hard at first. But I wanted like a concrete answer from God if God was really sending us to Romania. Even if things sometimes seem like they'd be a good idea, if it's not God's will, then I definitely did not want to go. So I just began to pray and I fasted and I said, Brian, if this is what God wants for our family, then we need to have a concrete word from God. Little did I know that Brian, with a couple years prior, prayed a prayer that he said was impossible, that he would end up serving in Romania. Because Austria is very close to Romania, we ended up coming here for a short-term mission trip, Brian, myself, and a group of other young people from Austria. And while we were serving in Romania for about a week, it ended up being Easter. And so for Easter Sunday, we went to church. And there was a man there that had never met Brian or me, did not even know our names, didn't know anything about us, just saw us, and God gave him a prophetic word for us. And pretty much what he was saying was that we came from a continent that many people desire and wish that they could be, but God called us to be in Romania. So of course, after this prophetic message, I looked at Brian and I'm like, okay, how did he know where we came from? How did he know all these things? And afterwards, we spoke to this man, to this brother, and he sure enough said that, I don't know where you guys are from. I don't know anything about you guys. All I know is that God said that He has called you guys to be in this country and to serve in this country. So of course, that was a huge confirmation for us. We both agreed to move out to Romania. The first 8 months here were really hard. Starting ministry from zero, there was nothing out here. Starting all of that, it was very difficult. It wasn't easy at many times, but we thank God for it because we've grown so much seeing all the things that we went through in the past years. After 8 months, we went back to the States for a couple months to work, to raise finances, to visit family. And before we left, I was like, okay, how do we know that God wants us back here? We were here for 8 months. We did a lot in these 8 months. And how do we know God wants us back? We have this little box with a bunch of little verses in it. Just random verses. And we both prayed and we said, let's pick a verse and see what God wants to speak to us through this verse. And so we both prayed that God would speak to us. We pulled out a verse, and it ended up being Genesis 26, verse 3. So of course, when I read this verse, it says, live here as a foreigner in this land, and I will be with you, and I will bless you. We both were like, okay, there's no way that it's just a coincidence. And so the next morning, we again decided to both pray and to pick out a verse. and there's thousands of little verses. It's small little like papers. There's thousands of verses in there, and Brian shuffled the box and he pulled out the same exact verse that God was speaking to us to live in this country as foreigners. He'll be with us and he will bless us. So if God spoke to us so clearly that he wanted us to be in Romania, I said, God, speak to us which city in Romania you want us to be in. We were currently living in the city of Arad. And I said, God, speak to us. Do you want us here? Do you have plans for us in a different city? Where do you want us to be? At the time, I was reading in Joshua, and I got to Joshua chapter 12, verse 14, where it says that Joshua defeated the king of Arad. What? That's crazy. Just remembering the way that God spoke so clearly, like you can't deny it. And that's exactly what I asked of God, because in ministry, things get hard and things are not always as simple as you think that they are. They get challenging. It challenges your faith. It challenges your own physical being. And I said, God, I want a concrete word from you that you have desired for us to be in Arad, in Romania, to serve out here. And God spoke to us, not just once, twice, but he spoke to us many times. Every time we were thinking about quitting, we were thinking about just going back to America, God spoke to us that he still had a plan for us in Romania. I don't know why God spoke to me to post this video and to speak about how God called us out here. Maybe God is calling you somewhere that you don't know how it's going to work out and you're needing a word from God. And my advice to you is seek and you will find. I'm not anyone special. I'm simply just a servant that has asked God for a word. And I believe that when you ask God and you have faith that you will receive it. God's plans for us are to give us a hope and to give us a future. They're not for evil. They're not to destroy us. They're not for destruction. They're for good. And so I pray that whatever plans God has for your life, that you will be obedient and walk in those plans, because there's no greater satisfaction. There's no greater joy than knowing that you are where God has asked you to be. So I pray that this video blesses you guys. Have a great day and don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys in my